Welcome back to the How to Launch on Flex 83 series, and today we will be covering another important concept. So, we have done 4 videos up till now, and this 5th video is about how to create connectors to MQTT and Mongo. MQTT and Mongo are 2 very basic and most important elements of the whole application creation that we do for the IoT. In the last video, we learned how to create an MQTT broker in our own Mongo database instance. Today, we will see how to create connectors to MQTT and Mongo databases. So let's dive right in. For the connectors part, first, we'll get the details of what we created. Let's take a look at the different running instances. We have the VernMQ service and we have the MongoDB already running. Let's click on the VernMQ service as we'll get all the necessary information here. We need the private DNS, so we'll copy this information onto a notepad. Then we need the password, so we'll copy that as well. The service is running over port 1883, so we'll copy that too. And finally, the username, which is root. Once we have all the necessary information in one place, we'll click on the Data Connectors section. Here we'll search for MQTT connectors and we'll click on Add New. We'll give this connector a name. For this example, we'll name it Demo MQTT Connector. The connector type is source, so we'll just let it be. In the Bootstrap section, we'll just put TCP, because it's a raw MQTT connection. We'll copy the private DNS and paste it into the Bootstrap server field. And after adding a colon, we'll add the port number as well. In the username section, we'll put root, then copy and paste the password in the field. Now we'll test the connection and we'll see a notification if it has been established successfully. And I think in the previous video we created a test topic which we'll be using here in this example. So we'll again click the Managed Services section. And here we'll look for Node-RED. This is the Node-RED instance we created earlier that is emulating a temperature sensor and is running already. From this instance, we'll get the topic that the system is sending data to. We'll click on it. Now let's take a look at this. We'll input the credentials and wait for the page to load. And in front of us is the dummy device and the data packet being published. From here, we'll get the topic information which we'll copy. And when we go back to our connector configuration page, we'll see that there is a section here to add topics. So we'll just paste the topic name. Now let's take a look at the data that is being published. For that, we have already connected a debug node to our flow and can see the data packets being published. So we'll click the Copy Value button here, copy the value of this payload. We'll switch back to the Connector Configuration tab. We'll hit this plus icon which says Add Schema, and paste the data packet. This is the JSON schema that has been generated by the simulator which we saw in the previous video. And for creating an MQTT connector, we need the information of the broker, the credentials, and finally, the topic from which the data is coming, along with the data that is being reported on the topic. Now we'll hit the Generate Schema button and see what happens. So the system has generated a schema successfully. We'll go ahead and save it. Finally, we'll test the connection and save the connector settings. This is how we create a MQTT source connector. Now, once we have done this step, what has happened is the data is flowing, or being pumped by this particular simulator, and is also pumping to the VernMQ broker that we had created. If we just open the node settings, you see the same connection string here. So now the data from this particular simulator can reach the Flex portal via this connector. How we see that data is something we'll learn in the next video. For now, let's create the second connector, which is the Mongo database connector. We'll go back to the Managed Services section and search for MongoDB. We'll copy the private DNS and the port number, which is 27017. The login user is root. And we'll also copy the password. We'll switch back to the connector section and search for Mongo. We'll click on Mongo Connector, add new, and just put Demo MongoDB Connector as the name. The connector type will be a sync connector because we need to save this data. We picked up this particular instance from the marketplace and we'll select it. This will show up automatically because when we launched the Mongo database in the previous videos, this was the name of the database that we had given. And finally, if you remember from the previous videos, Acme Demo was the name, and Demo was the username. Now we'll test the connection, and if it works, we save it. So this is how you create the connectors to both the services that we had launched in the previous videos. And we can see the connectors in the Data Connectors tab. We can see that we have an MQTT and a Mongo connector which are in use right now. They are capable of ingesting and transferring data from the MQTT broker and the Mongo database respectively. And that is how we create connectors from various sources on Flex 83. Thanks for watching.